in Rob's demo. Rob is going to be the primary presenter. He's going to present the background and context for AI in the enterprise. He's going to focus on sales use cases and OEM sales opportunities. And then he'll demo the AI use cases with a very interesting shareable example. And then I'll share some customer stories and insights from working directly with the tech companies. So our goals here for you is to provide a broader perspective on AI for enterprise sales, provide a framework for thinking about it looking forward, show you some of the use cases that you could be leveraging today, and then propose a playbook to get you started. This industry is moving fast, and so are we. With that, Rob, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I'm really excited to be talking to you all today. This is a topic that Jeff and I are particularly passionate about. We both spent most of our careers working with tech companies, largely in sales and marketing. I think both of us are engineers by training, but we've kind of moved into sales and marketing and all in OEM sales. So selling IoT, networking, semiconductor businesses, companies that sell to other businesses that use that technology as part of their products typically. Now, these are really unique markets, and the sales challenge in this market segment is different than it is in others. So we started this business to really help OEM supplier companies win in the market. And what AI can do in this market is really phenomenal. So we're excited to share some of that with you today. Uh, I'm going to go through some slides. Like Jeff said, you'll see this video later, so you'll get this information. But let me start just by saying what is happening in AI is really incredible. We're in this every day, thinking about it every day, and the rate of change is really phenomenal. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined where we are today. Coming from the semiconductor industry with Moore's Law, we thought that was fast, but in this industry, it's way faster. The capability in terms of the measured intelligence capability is doubling every 7 months. So that means 4 times faster than it was 14 months ago. It'll be, another 7 months, 21 months, it'll be 8 times faster. Just an incredible increase in capacity, an incredible rate of increase. And the models, the LLM capability today is just phenomenally good in comparison to where it was when we started this business with GPT-3, 3.5. And the cost is coming down. So we've seen a 240x price reduction. So more than a 99% price reduction in 18 months. So incredible decrease in price and incredible increase in capacity. Now, the combination of those means our business, every other business is going to apply intelligence across the entire business. And it's going to be inexpensive to do that from a compute standpoint. And the intelligence that we can bring to bear is going to get higher and higher. So this is the wave on top of which we are riding, and we're riding with our customers to bring them the benefit of AI. It's affecting lots of different aspects of businesses, but we're just seeing incredible adoption. Almost every company we talk to has a bunch of AI initiatives. This is from one of the studies. I think, Jeff, this was a Wharton study, if I remember right. 88% of organizations are using AI in at least one function. Increasing AI budgets. 82% of execs are using AI every week. So just across the board, we're seeing most enterprises trying to be aggressive around AI. Now, that doesn't mean that they know what to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're successful, but they know this is going to be important and they need to be all over it. The challenges when we talk to the AI people in these companies, or the top leadership in the companies, the challenges that companies face are that they have to prioritize. There are lots of potential use cases. They're not sure which ones to do. They don't know how to ensure usage once they roll something out. A lot of companies have started with like a general internal chat bot, and they find that people don't quite know how to use it. It takes a change of people's behavior in order to take advantage of the AI. And when they roll out those sort of general chatbots, they find that it's hard to measure the ROI. It's hard to see that there's a real impact on their organization. And so that as a use case is sort of marginal value. We found that there is real value if they focus on some specific use cases with a specific rollout plan. And that's why we wanted to talk to you today, because I think it's critical that you all, as sales leaders or enterprise leaders in your businesses, are focused on the right kinds of AI deployments to make sure that you can achieve the usage and achieve the ROI that you can that's possible with AI today.
Rob, I
So
think you
yeah.
want to be starting your screen, right? Sharing your screen, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Okay. So uh, yeah. Um, AI use cases are spanning a lot of different functions within businesses. This is from this Wharton study. These are the use cases that people are talking about deploying. A lot of these are oriented around employee productivity. So looking at data, documenting meeting notes, proposal writing, document writing, generating reports and presentations. A lot of this is automating some of the busy work that people do with computers, and that it's measured by an ROI from saving time. Now, that I want to talk a little bit about what the ROI looks like and how to think about ROI of these different use cases. Because what we've found as we've worked with different businesses is there's a huge divergence in the ROI that you can get from different use cases. And I think that's a critical part of prioritizing prioritizing different use cases. So thinking about how to prioritize use cases. So if you look at this list, a number of these are oriented towards sales and marketing, document and proposal writing, presentation report creating, marketing content creation, sales content creation. These are helpful, but they're really automating some aspects of the computer work that people do today, with particular tools. Like a lot of this is really driven by the Microsoft tools, for example, Copilot in PowerPoint and Word. But that's barely scratching the surface of what people are able to do with AI. And I think the important thing is when you look at the use cases that you're considering deploying, how do you think about measuring the ROI of those use cases? And we see it really in two categories. So one is productivity-based use cases. So here the ROI is effectively driven by the cost of an employee. You can maybe get more employees, right? That has a cost. You can reduce the number of employees. That has a savings. But effectively, it's about reducing the time, human time, which has a basically a per hour cost. And so it's a very clear economics, but there's typically a very small upside to this. It may be increasing profitability because you're reducing your costs, but in a lot of cases, people perceive it as reducing future costs because your business is going to grow and you're not going to have to grow labor. And CFOs look at that and they're often skeptical of what that ROI might be. We have found that in productivity-based use cases, we can typically get to 3x, sometimes even as high as 10x ROI in some of the application engineering functions, for example, where you're at the high end of the cost per hour cost. If you're at the low end and you're optimizing sort of analyst time or customer support agent time, it's kind of a marginal value proposition, and the ROI is not as high as you'd like it to be. It's not as big as a transformation as you'd like it to be. But the good news is in OEM supplier businesses, the businesses that we're all in, there's a much higher opportunity, much bigger opportunity for ROI, and that's really sales. So when we started to look at some of the numbers with our customers, large multi-billion dollar enterprises, we ran the numbers on ROI of different use cases. we found that once you start looking at sales, you basically stop looking at productivity use cases because the ROI can be so high. We've seen cases where it's more than 100x ROI. And the reason is because as even a small increase in sales capability, a small increase in win rate, a small increase in the number of opportunities you identify or the size of your funnel, those can have a huge impact on the economics of the business. One of the businesses we work with has identified more than $1 million a day of additional value that they can capture through some of these AI sales use cases. And it's really uncapped upside. It's uncapped because your growth is limited by the size of that market. The market may also grow. You may be able to grow that market. And it's really driven by accelerating your market and increasing your market share. So beating the competition. Now, these are in a lot of cases, these are kind of competitive use cases. So it's about you taking market share away from your competition in existing market segments. And so in order to do that, you've got to be aggressive about training your team to be able to take advantage of the new capability so that you get that increased market share. For OEM businesses, OEM supplier businesses, that there's an urgency to doing that because if you don't do it, you're going to lose the sockets. Your competitors are going to get those sockets. And in many cases, those sockets last for 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years or more. And so the opportunity is to get aggressive about AI and sales so that you win the sockets, you increase your market share today, and then that pays off over the next decade of revenue stream that comes from those wins. If you have one salesperson, a 5% increase in revenue might be worth 50 to 100K a year for that individual salesperson. And the deals that they win might pay out over 5 to 10 years. So you might be talking about $250,000 to $1 million in value from them getting that acceleration today. So that's why the ROI is so big in that area. And so I'd encourage you, if you're in the business and you're looking at different use cases of your business, think about sales and make sure that you sharpen your pencil on the ROI for sales because that's really where there's just a ton of value that you can get. Now, shifting, at the end of the day, this is about salespeople using it to perform the job, to perform the functions that they need to perform. There are a lot of different functions that people perform in sales. This is a small number of them. And I know there are a lot of words on this chart, but this is a small number of them. Ranging from top of funnel, finding new opportunities, all the way through customer success, end of funnel opportunities. So, and a salesperson is doing all of these every day, different deals at different stages. You may have in your organization, you may have people who focus on top of funnel and other people who focus on maintenance and existing accounts, account management. But most people work across this whole spectrum, and many of our kinds of OEM sales businesses have a long and complex sales cycle. And so people are simultaneously managing deals at these various stages in their career, right? Every day, every week, every month. It's difficult to do a great job of every one of these. We expect a lot from our salespeople, but the salespeople, in our experience, lots of conversations that we've had, the salespeople always want more help. They always want more product marketing. They always want more documentation of the product. They always want more application engineering support. They always want more sales engineering support. Companies have to throttle that because it's expensive to provide that. And so the salespeople are a little bit on their own doing this work. And they always want to have more time with the customer. They always want to have better prep so that they go in strong with the customer. But it's hard to do that because they're limited in their time. What we've found is that AI can help every one of these use cases, every one of them. Now, you don't start with every one of them, but it can help with every one of them. And I'm going to show you exactly how. But if you kind of thinking about those use cases and think about OEM sales, we in the industries that we're in have some unique challenges that are quite a bit different from what, say, Salesforce deals with in general, or revenue tech companies deal with in general. A lot of those companies are dealing with high volume consumer sales, or what people call high velocity software as a service sale, where a deal might happen over the course of 30 days, or a day, an hour, 30 days, very fast. In our industries, it's often a lot longer than that. It often takes a lot more engineering work up front. There's a much higher lift up front, to both persuade the customer, but I think more importantly, to help the customer de-risk their project so that they can be confident that if they work with you, they will succeed. So we make a big investment up front in those deals, and then those deals pay off over many years. And so it's a very different sales equation than Amazon selling a consumer product, or a SaaS company trying to get, $100 a month for one specific user. So, it's a very different kind of a business, and it requires a different kind of sales process. It requires strong technical selling. It requires team selling. There are often many people involved, application engineers, solution engineers, even the product engineers. It, in some cases, requires helping the customer with their design. In some cases, it requires engineering testing. It often requires the development of trust between the salesperson and the customer. And all of that is work. And that's what great salespeople in our industries do. But they're limited in their ability to do that by the resources we put around them, and just their own time and availability. That's what AI can change. And I'm going to show you specifically how. I'm going to show you a few different use cases, those highlighted in red here. So virtual applications engineering, competitive comparison, deal co-pilot, so like an assistant that's helping you with the deal, that understands the deal, document prep, stakeholder management, deal health scoring, meeting prep, and one that just is phenomenally large value proposition for large enterprises: cross-selling. So I have one opportunity. What are the other opportunities around it? So I'm gonna dive in. I'm gonna show you how our customers use our platform to do that, and then we'll talk about what that ROI looks like. So let me switch over here for a
But
second.
so, Rob,
Yeah.
before we do that, I think we're going to
Yeah.
do our survey. So we have a question for you. Which AI use cases provide the biggest sales impact for your company? And you should see the survey in front of you. Virtual sales engineer, that's answering technical questions at your fingertips. Customer research, that could be prospecting or just understanding your customer better. Sales prep documents, that's automated pre-sales or post-sales. Communications assistant for your emails or meeting prep. Competitive selling guides. So AI can actually deliver a per customer, per competitor automated guide, kill sheet, I guess. Um, Playbook template, how to follow your sales process better. Sales advisor, what happens if you have the best industry sales expert on the planet at your side? And then, as Rob just talked about, cross-selling tools. So
Great. Thanks,
you,
Jeff. I'm excited to see what everybody has to say about that. Uh, all right. Okay. So now I want to show you how people use, one way people use AI in sales. So this is the ept.ai platform, and I'm going to give you some examples in here. So and I'm going to walk you through a couple different aspects of it so you have a sense of how we think about it. So we always start with knowledge, product knowledge. The OEM suppliers, it's
Rob,
really about,
we're not seeing your screen again.
thank you. It's really about positioning the product. So it all starts with product knowledge. And the knowledge comes from the company's product sources. So we always start with knowledge sources, providing the AI the knowledge about your product. So what we'll typically do is is ingest the website, ingest SharePoint, Confluence, GitHub, whatever documentation you have in whatever format you have it, so that your AI in the ept.ai platform becomes an expert in your products. That happens all automatically. It ingests continuously or weekly, depending on the format. This is an example. You see that you would see that in this platform if you were working with us. This is our website, so it's some of the documents from our website. We've ingest HTML, we ingest PDF files. One of the things that we find interesting is how often was each document used in the generation of AI answers. And so you can see what documents the AI is leaning on quite a bit and what documents almost never show up. That can be pretty interesting. And so once we have that knowledge from your systems, then you can start to, we have a general chat capability, which customers find helpful for applications engineering. This is particularly tuned towards technical products that are sold to sophisticated technical buyers. And so you can ask sales and marketing questions, but you can also ask detailed technical questions to help with applications engineering or sales engineering. Um, when someone comes in and asks a question within this chat, it looks through the knowledge that's provided to it, and then it provides an answer. We do provide different voices and different approaches for different use cases. This is kind of a generalist use case here, but you can also tailor it towards customer support. You can tailor it towards applications engineering. In the deal room, which I'll show you in a couple minutes, it's really tailored towards strategic selling. And our customers often connect this to different places where people may want to access AI. So that'll often come in ticketing systems so that in the sales process, you can respond quickly to customer questions through ticketing systems. Chatbots that can be deployed on your website or in a distributor portal or to your team internally on your intranet. So all sorts of different places you can leverage this AI once it's been trained on your products and how your products work and how to sell your products. So that's at the foundation, is a deep understanding of your products. Um, that's used in many places. The place that where we've found the ROI is highest is around sales. And so I'm going to show you an example of what we call a deal room. So a deal room is a place that a salesperson goes to work on a specific deal. They'll typically invite their application engineers, their sales engineers, maybe the product people into that deal room so they all share a view of the deal. This is typically connected to a CRM system. So if you have Salesforce or HubSpot or Microsoft Dynamics or something else, it connects to that. So it has that information about the deal. But this is a place where there's an AI and a bunch of AI agents that work together to help you advance the deal. And so I'm going to walk you through it. Um, the AI is the core of it, but I'm going to show you that last. Um, First, I'll start by some of the agent background research that we've done. So in this case, we thought it'd be fun to share NVIDIA selling data center chips to OpenAI. So if NVIDIA is using this platform and they're trying to sell to OpenAI, frankly, NVIDIA I think has no problem with sales. So their challenge more is manufacturing. But if NVIDIA was trying to win deals at OpenAI, this is how they would do it. They would use the deal room. When they type in OpenAI as the customer, what they're trying to sell to OpenAI, the AI agents go out and do the research to help the salesperson understand the deal, understand the account. And so we've done research on the company. Who is this company? Give me some information about the scale and size of the company. We find that when we walk people through this, they often learn something immediately right here. Wow, I had no idea this business was so diverse, or I thought they were a lot bigger than that, or whatever. This is really helpful in qualifying, understanding the customer. We also analyze the strategy of the company. What is this company trying to do? Who are they? What do they care about? Our experience is if you really understand what your customer cares about, you can do a much better job of positioning your products to meet their strategic objectives. Every great salesperson knows that. It's hard to find the time to do the work necessary to really position your products relative to the strategic objectives of your customer. So this does all that legwork for you. So the AI has access to this information. It knows the AI here knows the strategic priorities of this customer because we've done the research. Um, where are they headed? What are their product lines? For OEM businesses, one of the things that we added in here that's been great is if you're selling into a product, say you're selling into a consumer product or an industrial product, it'll try to make an estimate of what the volume of that product is, so how many units per year, what's the price point, and what's the cadence of their product release, and when was the last one released. That's really helpful in understanding when the socket is open so that you can figure out when to get in there and win that socket. So this in and of itself is helpful for people to read, but there's a lot of other information. We pull news feeds. We uh, comment on in what way is this news relevant to your deal? How can you use this to engage with the executives in your deal? We pull information, competitive information. So, number of you are saying competitive selling guides are an important part of the sales process. We do these dynamic, customer-specific kill sheets. So this is a sales guide, competitive sales guide for NVIDIA against AMD for OpenAI. So this is it figured out what do we think are the top performance criteria, and then we analyze the heck out of each of these products. Every product from NVIDIA, every relevant product from NVIDIA, every relevant product from AMD. We go through and we do all this research on the different products. Every criteria and every product has a body of research associated with it, like this one pager here. But every criteria has a one pager. So literally hundreds of pages of research go into the creation of this kill sheet so that you as a salesperson can confidently go in and fight and compete and win against your competitor for this socket, for this particular socket. Now, that's great. That in and of itself is high value because product marketing people often won't dedicate the time to doing the work to give you those kill sheets. But one of the things that's super exciting about this is it is also customer specific and dynamic. So if you have, say, a meeting transcript that goes into your CRM system and it says, hey, they don't care about, they don't care about maximum TDP, or they need it, they need the maximum TDP to be, less than 500 or whatever. This will automatically update itself. It may go out and may choose a different NVIDIA product. It may go out and choose a different AMD product. It may move that up to the top of the list here. It will change what this exec summary of the competitive sales guide is. This is customer specific and dynamic. And that is something that this agent does that work on the salesperson's behalf so that they can constantly see the right information for this particular customer. So hugely helpful in competing and winning sockets. The sales, for those of you who are sales leaders and sales managers, what you want to know is where are we in the deal? What's happening in this deal? Um, I want to have a standardized way to look at this and talk about this with all of my salespeople across all the different market segments, all the different regions. So we have an automated and this, in many cases, tailored snapshot of the deal status that's based on what is actually happening in this deal. It it measures that based on the CRM information, the emails, the call transcripts, the notes that get forwarded or put into the CRM or dragged and drop into this tool. And this is the AI's assessment of where you are in the deal, green, yellow, red. And so this creates an opportunity, a structured way for you to review with salespeople based on the actual data of the actual communications with the customer, which is a much better way to do it than asking the salespeople to put together PowerPoint presentations to review. So this is automated, continuously up to date. The other area that I think is super exciting is the application view. We added this because many of our customers, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, many of our customers, cross-selling is one of the biggest opportunities because they may have an opportunity with one product for that customer, but there may be five other businesses within their enterprise that could also sell to that customer. Most companies don't have good mechanisms for sharing those opportunities across business lines or across divisions. The deal room has the built-in capability to identify what those other opportunities are. And that we have found in a number of cases where that will more than double the pipeline for the enterprise, more than double the pipeline. And this is more than doubling the pipeline with existing customer engagements. So huge opportunity for ROI through this cross-selling. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Um, Another thing that's super critical in sales is stakeholder management, understanding who are the people, what do they care about, um, what's their background, where have they been, what are they interested in. Every time you have an email that comes in, every time you have meeting notes that are distributed, that information gets in here and is updated, so you know what this person cares about is this. This is their role on the deal. This is how they feel about it today. This is what we have to do to address their concerns. So the salesperson always has complete visibility and can think about stakeholder management of the deal. So that is also hugely helpful for many of our customers. There's a lot in here, and at the end of the day, looking at this information in the user interface is interesting, but what really blows people away is that this AI becomes a strategic partner in the selling process. We're meeting Sam next week. What should we discuss? Oh, sorry, Jeff, I don't have don't have access to this one. But what this would normally do is it would um, immediately go out and do the research on what's the status of this deal, what do we know about the product, what's happening with the company, how do we align strategically, and it would provide an agenda for our meeting next week with Sam. And it can do this dynamically based on the information in the deal room, all the CRM information. And this is phenomenally helpful for salespeople to have this thought partner of the AI to generate the appropriate documents. We can generate company specific sales material, for example. That's hugely helpful for making it easier for them to do the work necessary to provide high quality deliverables for their customers. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you now to talk a little bit about how this can impact the sales process.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. So I think you're going to go back to the slides.
Yeah, do that.
So our experience has shown that for the use cases that Rob just pointed out for OEM sales, that um, salespeople can save 2 or more hours per week through the use of whether it's the automated sales documents, the applications engineering knowledge, the collaborating with team members, aligning with your manager, using the AI as an advisor, or even handing off accounts. And that's a 5% time savings per week. It's different for different roles. Key account managers might use the planning tools. A sales engineer is obviously going to use the applications engineer at your fingertips. Channel partners can use the competitive selling guide. What we see in terms of criticism of current AI sales tools or just using Microsoft Copilot is that productivity increase doesn't necessarily result in a revenue increase. And the key here really is that an AI tool needs to provide both the better quality customer engagement, but also an improvement in the sales process. And if you get all of that together, what that does is it drives revenue. And that revenue, looking at our platform, will deliver an ROI somewhere between 15 and 50 times, as Rob indicated. Of course, it depends on, what a salesperson's quota is, depends on your gross margin. But the results are truly phenomenal. Rob, if you could go to the next slide. So I'm not going to go through this eye chart, but what this represents is a framework for understanding how AI should improve sales outcomes. And what's interesting here is this is going to match up to your intuition. It marries up to Miller-Heiman seller tools or, MedPick, whatever strategic selling platform or process you're using. What it basically says is that in addition to increasing your selling capacity, the productivity opportunities that you get from AI, what you really want to do is enable your sales team to follow the process that you've built and to give them the capability to better engage with customers. And if you do that, the number of opportunities you get will increase and the win rate that you get increases. And as a result of all of that, your revenue increases as well. So a lot of factors at play here, but what's nice to know is that the theory actually follows the practice. All right, this is great, but wait, there's more. So the best thing you can do, as Rob indicated earlier, is not just help yourself through the sales funnel, but if you can actually add to the top of the funnel with qualified opportunities. So I'm going to hand it back to Rob to talk about cross-selling.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but one of the things that we've done is we've worked with the websites of hundreds and hundreds of different OEM suppliers. And through that, we've developed our proprietary database of applications, what we call applications, which is the end product that the OEM component is being sold into, and a breakdown of that into different subsystems and components. And it looks a little bit different in different market segments. This is a view of what it looks like in the semiconductor space. So you have the application, in this case, gaming headphones, subsystems. I think that in this one, there are 10 or so subsystems, one of which is audio input subsystem. And then there are components within that subsystem. In this case, like MEMS microphone is an example, and there are a few others. Um, by breaking it down that way, what we find is that many of the, say, semiconductor companies or OEM suppliers, they'll have a business that finds an opportunity in one of those components. And so, for example, in a MEMS microphone. And that may be, just in and of itself, that may be a multi-million-dollar lifetime opportunity for that particular socket. So you go after, you fight, and you win, try to win that socket. But the opportunity may also exist for multiple other products within the company's portfolio. And that is where this, especially as there's been consolidation in a lot of these businesses, we work with a lot of private equity firms that have rolled up large industrial conglomerates where you have a lot of cross-selling opportunity, but a lot of companies don't have a good ability to identify where those cross-selling opportunities are. What we can do now is every time there's a deal room built, we identify where are all those cross-selling opportunities. We highlight those cross-selling opportunities and provide a mechanism to expand the size of the deal with other products that may come from other divisions or other business lines or other product lines within the company so that you can expand the top line. We found, we say here that we can double the pipeline for existing customers. We've actually found that in a lot of cases, it may be as much as 10x larger opportunity if you look at all of the components within the business. So the ROI on this is just phenomenally large. Increasing, if you have, if you're selling one component and you go to two, that's doubling your business, right? That is going to be a huge ROI for this. That's going to be 100x ROI or more for what we're providing in this area. And the companies that do this effectively are going to gain market share at the expense of their competitors. And this is happening already. The leading companies are really using this to try to drive their footprint and drive their market share growth. Super exciting area and probably the highest value ROI that we've seen with AI anywhere. So if you're interested in this, definitely, I see that some of you in the poll have said that this is an important area. For those of you that haven't, I'd really encourage you to take a strong look at it to understand what the ROI can be in this area if it's effective for your business. Now, this is mostly true for larger businesses that have a diverse product portfolio that serves a common set of applications. Not every business is like that. But for those who do, this is the killer use case for AI. Okay, so the next question that people ask, of course, is, can I do this with confidence? Can I actually roll this out? And I'll say there's a lot of evidence that a lot of companies have really struggled, not with this particular solution, but in getting ROI from AI. And our experience is if you throw something out there and expect people to change their behaviors and use it, it won't work. They will not be able to just instantly have some future vision for how they're going to use it and how their job's going to be different. What we've developed is what we think of as a battle-tested rollout approach, where it's a fairly high-touch pilot process where we work with individuals. We find, you saw that chart before where we had all the different use cases. On that chart, you're going to find different people who cared deeply about each of those use cases, but they're all going to be different. So what we found, they're all possible with a single AI platform, but it's difficult for users to discover those. And so we found this high touch pilot helps us work with the individuals to figure out what are their pain points and see how they can address their own pain points with AI. And then they become avid fans. We typically have 100% of salespeople say, yes, I need this. But very different use cases, very different problem statements that they're trying to address. But the solution is so flexible that it can address many different use cases. And for sales managers, for many of the people who are on this call today, or sales leaders, one of the big drivers is tailoring this to your individual selling process so that you're addressing your business needs, aligning your sales processes to your standards, which is difficult to do with training, but there's a great opportunity to do that in this pilot phase. And then the scaling is effectively doing that hand holding at a larger scale with more people, helping people along in the journey so that they can use AI effectively. So we think a lot about change management and bringing people along in that journey. Because in OEM sales, people are not going to be replaced with AI. People are going to be augmented by AI. And bringing people along in that journey is the critical aspect of success. It's the critical success criteria. So, with that, I think we're at our time, or maybe a little bit beyond our time. Um, the bottom line of this is AI is happening in a big way in the enterprise, and the big win is AI in sales. That's where you're going to achieve a big ROI. There are many companies that have done this already successfully. I encourage you to follow a battle-tested approach to make sure that you can achieve the same ROI or a bigger ROI. And I think the key really is to get started. This is happening quickly. It's a competitive market. The companies that do this well are going to increase market share. The companies that rely on yesterday's sales processes are going to lose market share. And so this is an area where I think it's really critical to be aggressive and adopt new technologies today. So with that, I'm going to pass it back and see if we have any questions.
Actually, just one thought,
Yeah.
Rob, before we get to questions. So Jensen Huang called up and he said he's given you access to his deal room, and if you want to show the answer to the question.
All
You asked
right.
about sound.
Try that one again. All right. So, uh, then maybe I didn't copy it here. Well, I don't want to do that actually. I think we're at our time, Jeff. I want to just move on and take those questions, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Great. Munzer, did you have any questions from the audience?
Hey, yeah, so there's a question. How does the platform integrate with our CRM, ticket system, internet portals, and distributor tools?
Okay. Um, Yeah, so different. It's a little bit different for each of those, but we have a bunch of different integrations, and typically the IT team goes through and they click what the integration is, and that automatically connects to the integration, and then from there we automatically ingest that information regularly with from the system. That's true for a CRM. So every time an email comes into the CRM, um, every time an email comes into the CRM, we automatically ingest that information, and that gets added to the deal room. For websites, it happens automatically. For like SharePoint, it also happens automatically. So every one of those really happens automatically and continuously.
All right. There's another question. How long does it take to onboard our entire product catalog, legacy documentation, and support history?
Sure. Websites, so very large websites, like websites that are from very large companies, might take up to a few days. Um, uh, Support history, so we'll typically ingest all historical support tickets, and that might take a few hours or days. But really, in a couple days, we have everything that's needed within our system.
Right. Let me see if there are any other questions. Sorry about that. How do we prevent AI from giving incorrect or overly generic answers that could undermine credibility?
Sure. So most for sales, the deal room, all those answers are really internal answers, so they're just your sales team themselves. Um, when you provide this directly to customers, we uh, really have tailored our solutions so that it doesn't give generic answers. It really gives good answers based on the right applications engineering perspectives and guidance. Um, We also have a tool we call AI performance management, which allows the company, allows you visibility into the answers that are given and the questions that are asked, and give you the ability to control how the AI responds. And so if there are areas where you're getting answers that are not specific enough, it's typically because there's not enough knowledge provided, and we have a number of different mechanisms for getting new knowledge into this system. So for example, if maybe you have an app support ticketing system connected in, every time a support agent answers a question, we anonymize that information so we can add that into the knowledge base, and that allows us to provide pretty specific answers to questions.
All right. I can see another question here. Can you show more details on how the AI identifies cross-sell or design win patterns automatically?
Sure. Um, so the first area is really understanding the application. So starting at the application, which, in the semiconductor world, you might call the bill of materials, and maybe in the OEM space, you call it bill of materials, but it's basically taking that and, taking the application and turning it into a list of subsystems and components. And so we've built this proprietary database of those application views. And then within the component, we specify what is this component, what is the purpose of this component, what are the important performance criteria for this component, And then, of course, we have all the product knowledge so we can look through the product catalog and figure out what products might fit that component requirements. So that's one approach is basically that kind of application down to the component. There are a couple other approaches that people have used around cross-selling. One is the very common thing in the industry is called design win replication. So, I've worked on a particular application in a deal room, in Japan, and we sold this product and that product against this competitor, and here's how we won. And so you want to replicate that design win across different regions and different customers. Bring that from, that one deal in Japan to deals in China and deals in Europe and deals in the US or wherever. Um, and so design win replication is taking the learnings from a deal or a deal room and turning that into something that other deal rooms can access as well. So we have a mechanism to do that, to turn that into a document that the AI then has access to so that it can learn in your deal room about the other wins. And the third thing is related to that, which is where this product has been sold, this product has also been sold. That's kind of a subset of design win replication. It's a kind of a smaller view of design win replication. Now, companies have tried to do that just on a component level. This part number often follows this part number. We find that it's more valuable to do it on an application level because um, with if you know the application, you know more about the overall solution and what you're trying to fit into, and that ends up being a better predictor of the usefulness of the cross-selling recommendations. And so we typically try to do it at an application level rather than just correlating product numbers.
hmm Thanks. There's one more question. This is an interesting one. How does AI help with complex multi-year accounts where context is critical and relationships run deep?
Yeah. That's basically our industry, right? That's um, a lot of these are deals that run for multiple years. You might have an account manager that's worked with this team for a long time. And but there's always change. There are always things that are happening in the deal. And in those are typically large deals also. There may be a lot of people involved in the deal. There may be a lot of material involved in the deal. What you really want to have is you want to have a 360 view of that deal, what's happening in the deal, and you want to be on top of it all the time, on top of the history and on top of the current status. It's just difficult for us as humans to do that. It's a lot of information, right? So we've developed a lot of technologies, the ability to write, ability to search email, developed a lot of technologies to make it easier for us to have larger memories, to outsource our memories to other locations. Email's a great way to do that, but I've worked on a lot of these big long deals. I'm always searching my email. What? I remember there was some email that I sent to so and so where I talked about this. As you get a lot of deals, and a lot of those deals have a lot of history, it's just hard to keep it all in your head, frankly. With the AI, with a deal room, that deal, the information about that deal is collected within that room. And the AI is phenomenally good at sorting through that information and extracting the right information when you ask a question to answer that question. And so I would say, if you think about AI in sales, a lot of people think AI in sales is eliminating sales development reps for software as a service company. Sure, that's fine. That doesn't help us in this OEM supplier segment. What helps us is managing these big, long deals. And what that takes is collecting the information about the deal in the right place, making it accessible by a trained agent that understands complex strategic selling and understands your product. And so what we do is really oriented towards those long, complex deals that you've been in for years.
All
All right,
right.
I think we're a little bit past our time. Jeff, do you want to wrap us up?
Sure, sure. So thank you for joining us today. I hope this gave you a clear sense of what's possible with AI in sales and what's available today. If we didn't get to your question, I saw Munzer was about to ask another one. Our team will follow up with you individually via email within 24 hours, and you'll also get a link to today's recording and a calendar link for our next webinar, January 27th, How B2B Tech Teams Turn Internal AI Expertise into Fast, High ROI Deployment. And we know every company that we work with has AI in process across the organization. What we find is that teams that have done more can do more when we work with them. And so this webinar will be really focused on making the internal efforts as accelerate the internal efforts, particularly in sales and support dimensions. Great. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. Take care.